homeschooling concept. So it began in 1960s and 70s, but it was never popular until post-pandemic. It became more popular than ever, especially in Western North America, where a lot of tech companies are present. I extracted some of the stats. In 2019, the homeschoolers were around 2.3 million in US, and by 2022, it's 4.3 million students who are being homeschooled. So that's a significant growth in just 2 years for homeschoolers. Some of the motivation behind the homeschooling. There are broadly categorized. One is the concern about the school environment, 2, dissatisfaction with the academic instructions, and 3, the safety concerns, and 4 is for the religious regions, they want to homeschool their kids. Even though the homeschool requires a lot of patience, work from parents, some of the parents are willing to do that. So just want to understand from you, what is your take on homeschool concept, and how does the industrial schools can bridge some of these gaps homeschoolers are trying to rise?
There is definitely a shift. For some parents, I would imagine that they are choosing to keep their children in a safe, cozy environment where they don't necessarily want the kind of problems that are associated with social media bullying. It's more of a challenge now for schools to manage behavior.
Yeah.
Because behavior is no longer just in the dimensions of the room or the building or the school premises. It goes beyond that, because one child will have access to another child late at night in their home through a phone, a mobile phone or a device. Therefore, it's a lot harder for schools, and many parents do see it as the school's responsibility to manage the interactions between students, even if it goes on outside of school hours through devices. And I've experienced parents who've been very bitter and angry about those interactions, even though there's very little I can do, because I'm not the one that's placed the device in the hands of the children. I'm not the one that's allowed them to have accounts on social media that they're not old enough to have. They also have access to a lot more resources than parents had 15, 20, 30 years ago. Online platforms, the tutoring services like Byju's and so on, the opportunities to find resources through the internet to educate are infinite. And that's exciting for a parent who has the time and the ability to sit with a child and help them to learn what that parent wants them to learn. Wonderful. I mean, home learning is a great way to go. But realistically, how many parents actually have that time to do it well? How many parents understand enough about education and the learning process to do it well? And my worry is that when many of these students reach the point where they're either applying for jobs or they're applying to universities, will they all have what the universities are looking for, either academically or in terms of skills? If some of those families are taking a slightly different approach and saying that they want to develop a young adult who is, able to exist in the world and sustain their own life or own livelihood in a very specific way without needing further qualifications, without needing to work in an employee-employer relationship, then that might work very well. But my worry again is that for many of these children, if that homeschooling goes from kindergarten right the way through to grade 12, how good are their social skills going to be? Are parents aware that actually the vast majority of learning happens child to child?
Exactly.
It's not what a teacher is giving the child in terms of information, knowledge and skills. It's one child looking at another child, observing their interactions, their response to different stimulus and copying it. And if you isolate your child and they're not exposed to that for long periods of time, then they are going to struggle in terms of their social context and their understanding of the place within the world. So I think there's lots of positives about it. Take a year out, take your child and go and sail around the world with them and give them opportunities and keep them up to speed with some studies, but give them opportunities that are unique. But don't think for 1 minute that that is a complete substitute for the interactions that they have in a classroom setting, in a good school, because it's about getting the balance right.
But at the same time, when there is this safety concern as well on the, you mentioned bullying, how does some of these things can be organically controlled?
One of the things I would say about a good school is that they will have a very clear definition of what bullying is. And it's important that parents understand what bullying is and what it is not. Children will naturally interact with other children. And the majority of time it's happy, it's laughter, it's fun, it's learning. Sometimes students will say things to other students that are hurtful and mean, and it's part of the learning process as to how to respond to that. Now, if that's happening repeatedly, directed from one child to another child over a period of time, it becomes bullying. I've dealt with a lot of parents who, at the first time one child touches another child or says something bad, they come to me and say, "Why are you not dealing with this bullying?" Well, actually, that's not bullying. That's one-off. It's learning. That child has been reprimanded. The parents of the child that took action against against another child that was upsetting, they've been informed about it. And they've been told very clearly, if the child repeats it, it's going to become bullying. But children have to learn. You can't chastise a child and deal with it at the highest level at the first opportunity. And we've also got to remember that, in a diverse learning environment, in a classroom of 20, 24, 30 students, that's a diverse learning environment, because all of those students will come from different backgrounds. They will have had different experiences. Many of them will have different ways of learning. They may have behavioral and neurodivergent ways of learning, which could mean that they behave differently to other children. But it's important that all children learn how to behave with all other children.
Right.
Because when they go out into the big wide world, going to meet people that say things that are hurtful, and people may not mean it.
Yeah.
Sadly, there are people that will say things hurtfully deliberately, but often people are just careless in what they say because of the environment they've been brought up in, because something that's acceptable in my home may not be acceptable in your home, and that's not their fault. So it's helping children understand what is not appropriate and what's acceptable. So I do understand from a parent perspective, they want to protect their child.
Yeah.
But there's also an element of, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You've got to be in situations that are challenging to develop resilience. You won't develop resilience if you're wrapped in cotton wool and kept in a home environment with only your close family friends and your grandparents and your cousins around you.
Yeah, not that we are encouraging bullying, but your child going to go out in the society, have to deal with these kind of situations.
And absolutely. And we will have a zero tolerance to bullying, as every school that I've worked in has.
Yeah.
And when we have instances that are bullying, we will deal with it, and we will work with the child to learn not to do it. And if they continue and they're not learning, then the parents will have to take that as a consequence, that they will be asked to leave.
Absolutely.
But it requires the other families to have patience and understanding. And, I'm not at liberty to share with some parents that a particular child is neurodivergent.
Yeah.
A child may have ADHD, they may have a behavioral disorder, they may have abuse at home that leads to them behaving badly in class because they can't control their behavior. They're still learning to regulate their emotions. I'm not at liberty to share that kind of information with all parents.
Right.
Parents have to have some trust in the school. And I think that's one of the big problems now, is that parents are finding it harder to trust because they themselves are of an age where they've come through in a period of time where they're exposed to a lot more information, and a lot of information is misleading, and it's not necessarily the best thing to have. Little bits of information that are not well explained or not well understood can put parents in a position where they think they know what's best for their child, and maybe it is, but also maybe in the long term they may regret some of the decisions they take in making those big steps to take a child out of school.
For the parents who will be in this kind of mindset, not just for bullying, the roles and responsibilities, we have joined our kid in a pretty good school and let them take care of it, everything. What do you say for those kind of parents?
Those parents will have signed a contract with the school that explains that this is a partnership. You don't just hand over your child to a school, even if it's a boarding school, and expect the school to develop all the values and everything within that child. The school can go a long way to establishing good habits, to establishing a good set of values. When a child leaves the school gates and goes back to their parents, back to their grandparents, to their family, they will be exposed for a lot longer to a lot more people that, in all honesty, they will have a lot closer relationships with. That's the biggest challenge in the world of education, is that we take a child, in a case of a day student, we have them for 15% of their lives before the age of 18. It's not a lot of time to make the kind of differences that parents expect us to make. We'll work with the parents, we'll be offering workshops, orientation programs to help parents understand what kind of things they can do to create the right kind of environment, the right kind of values, without compromising their family values. But can give students the opportunities to develop resilience, can develop empathy. We'll offer families that kind of support and guidance, because for many families it's the first time they've had little ones. Many of our generation have grown up with home help, with nannies, with home care that wasn't our parents. We're now seeing a generation of parents who don't know what to do with their children because they didn't do it. They weren't exposed to it from their own parents. They don't want the same kind of experience they had in its entirety. They want elements of it. And trying to help parents understand that they're not there to be their child's best friend. They're there to make sure that when their child turns 18, 20, 21, they've got an independent, pleasant, young adult with good values, good morals, who can go out into the world that they can be proud of. And you don't necessarily get that by being the best friend, by protecting them from everything,
Exactly.
by giving them everything they want when they want it. You've got to be the parent. That is such an important thing that we have to remind parents of more and more, actually.
It takes a village to grow a child to know.
Absolutely, it really does. And that village is made up of many people.
Yeah, the society, parents, teachers, everyone.
But the parents are the big ones. They are the role models.
Yeah.
And one of my first responses to many parents who say that they're worried about their child being addicted to their device, I often turn it back to them and say, what do you role model for your child?
Yeah.
Do you sit at the dinner table?
How much of screen time you are using in the first
yeah.
place? Yeah.
If you put your phone down and tell your child, come on, we're going to sit now and we're going to read a book together,
Yeah.
then your child will love reading. It's about getting that role modeling right. And that's what I'll expect from my teachers, to role model really well for our students. But parents also need to learn that as well.